Hey, so today's show is completely done. I was actually about to upload very, very early, and then this news broke, and it felt weird to not include it. And it's the news that conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was just shot in the neck while speaking at Utah Valley University today. There is footage of what happened. I am not going to show it. There was a further one. There is a much closer video that is just horrifying to look at. It looks like he was shot in the neck. According to local news outlets, the school sent out a message to students saying a single shot was fired on campus toward a visiting speaker. Police are investigating now, suspect in custody. So as I'm adding this, you have the New York Times saying that the police have determined that the person who was taken into custody after the shooting was not actually the shooter, according to Scott Trotter, a university spokesperson. Right now, Kirk's condition has been described as unclear, unknown, but it looks bad. And obviously, we're going to be talking about this tomorrow. We'll hopefully know a lot more then. And let me just be clear. This is horrific, disgusting, wrong. And no matter my differences of opinion or politics, I denounce political violence. And I'm sending my thoughts, wishes, and prayers to Charlie and his family. Kamala Harris just broke her silence and went after Biden, his team, and what she called his recklessness. Andrew Cuomo is trying to spark a Hasan, Piker, Zohran, Mamdani 9/11 scandal moments before the anniversary. And Poland just invoked Article 4 after NATO had to shoot down Russian drones over the country. We're talking about all of that and actually even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. You now have Andrew Cuomo trying to use Hasan Piker against Zohran Mamdani. And this is just some of the latest, of course, in what's been a wild roller coaster ride of a New York City mayoral race. But yesterday you had Cuomo accepting an endorsement from a 9/11 first responder and his family while speaking near Ground Zero. And at the event, he had two posters on display. One with a photo from Hasan and the quote, "America deserved 9/11, which is something that Hasan said on stream back in 2019, though his supporters have noted that he said the comment was inappropriate and he never meant that the victims deserved to die. And then another showing Hasan and Mamdani shaking hands as Hasan previously interviewed him while he was on the campaign trail. And while Cuomo didn't appear to discuss Mamdani's interview with Hasan directly during his remarks, Wendy Turtorici, the wife of an EMT and first responder, did mention him, releasing a statement saying, "I know firsthand what kind of leader Andrew Cuomo is. As governor, he fought to secure benefits for 9/11 families. His opponent, Zohran Mamdani, proudly associates with Hasan Piker, a man who said America deserved 9/11. To families like mine, that's not politics, that's life and death. His association with Hasan Piker disqualifies him to serve in any role for New York City, let alone one as important as mayor." Right, and so with all of that, right, the event and those two posters specifically, they end up going viral online. And we had some saying that Mamdani needs to denounce Hasan. A lot of the most popular reactions were things like, "Hey, you know that massively popular streamer who is beloved by millions and resonates with Gen Z? He supports the other guy." As well as Andrew Cuomo standing next to a sign that says in big letters, "America deserved 9/11 with no additional context other than a photo of a Twitch streamer that most regular New Yorkers have never heard of. What a fantastically run campaign." You then also had Piker addressing the situation, tweeting, "Judge me by my enemies, another sex pest," and then saying on stream,
"The reason why this is such a stupid line of attack is because either nobody knows who I am, and that's the overwhelming majority of normies, or the people that do know who I am overwhelmingly are on the younger side. They're already very pro-Zohran. I already associated with him, and he won the fucking primaries. I did my job." It's also pure racism through and through, but it's an act of desperation overall.
And then as far as Mamdani's reaction or response to this, he has not addressed the situation himself yet, but you did have a spokesperson for his campaign telling New York Magazine, "Andrew Cuomo knows exactly what he's doing. He's holding a press conference to suggest that Zohran Mamdani, who is poised to become New York's first Muslim mayor, somehow supported 9/11. It's vile, it's dangerous, and it's deliberate. New Yorkers can see this for what it is, a cynical attempt to recycle the ugliest playbook in our politics." And saying Cuomo is not protecting the memory of 9/11 victims, he's once again desecrating it by weaponizing grief and pain for his own ambition. Right, and all of this, it is notably coming as polling has found that Mamdani is way ahead of Cuomo. With a new poll saying, if the 2025 New York City mayoral election were held today, who would you vote for? And 46% said that they would vote for Mamdani compared to just 24% for Cuomo. And also I'll say a key takeaway was that people that responded strongly favored Mamdani on issues like affordability, housing, and dealing with Israel-Palestine. But ultimately, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens from here till November. There's still plenty of road. And in the meantime, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts here with this most recent bit, especially because I know Hasan Piker can be a polarizing figure. Some of you love him, some of you hate him, some are indifferent, but what are your thoughts here? But then next up in the news today, we got to talk about how Kamala Kamala Harris just said to Joe Biden, "You shouldn't have."
Did it, Joe?
Or with Harris admitting that Biden running for re-election, that was a mistake. She also gave a damning account of her time in his administration, though I will say she did come to his defense in one way. And all of this, it's coming from an excerpt published in The Atlantic from Harris's upcoming memoir, 107 Days, which is a reference to the number of days that Harris campaigned for the presidency after Biden dropped out of the race in 2024. In the pieces that were given here, it really does focus on the Joe Biden of it all. So you had things like Harris saying that she felt sidelined within the White House, with her chief of staff having to constantly advocate for her role at events, writing she's not going to stand there like a potted plant, give her 2 minutes of remarks, have her introduce the president. You also had Harris saying that getting anything positive said about her work or any defense against untrue attacks was almost impossible, with one example, according to her, being related to how Biden tasked her with leading his administration's effort to curb migration at the southern border. With Harris writing, "When Republicans mischaracterize my role as border czar, no one in the White House comms team helped me to effectively push back and explain what I had really been tasked to do, nor to highlight any of the progress I had achieved." Right? And with that, she criticized the team for not defending her in other ways as well, including when conservative media attacked her on everything from her laugh to her tone of voice to whom she dated in her 20s, or when they claimed that she was a DEI hire, and saying that Biden's team rarely pushed back with my actual resume. 2 terms elected DA, top cop in the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, senator representing 1 in 8 Americans. And in fact, she wrote, "She often learned that the president's staff was adding fuel to the negative narratives that sprang up around me." Though I will say, with that, you had Biden's former White House chief of staff not agreeing with Harris, but at least saying in a past interview that Harris didn't always get what she deserved, saying we were all united behind the idea she should be successful. We just didn't find the path to do it. People really liked her. There's a lot of enthusiasm for her, and I don't think we did a good enough job of selling her. Though notably, it definitely seems like Harris would argue it was more than that. Or with Harris claiming that when polls indicated she was getting more popular, the people around Biden didn't like the contrast that was emerging. And as a specific example, she talked about how President Biden had started taking on water for his perceived blank check to Benjamin Netanyahu in Gaza. And, then she gave a strong speech on the situation. And with that, she said it was a speech that had been vetted and approved by the White House and the National Security Council. It went viral and the West Wing was displeased. I was castigated for apparently delivering it too well, and adding, their thinking was zero sum. If she's shining, he's dimmed. None of them grasped that if I did well, he did well. Then possibly the biggest bombshell from this bit is what she had to say about Biden seeking re-election, with her writing, "It's Joe and Jill's decision. We all said that like a mantra, as if we'd all been hypnotized. Was it grace or was it recklessness?" In retrospect, I think it was recklessness. The stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego, an individual's ambition. It should have been more than a personal choice. Right? And then connected to that, she also said she was in the worst position to make the case that he should drop out, writing, "I knew it would come off to him as incredibly self-serving if I advised him not to run. He would see it as naked ambition, perhaps as poisonous disloyalty, even if my only message was, don't let the other guy win." But then also something that a lot of people got to focus on here, maybe even more than her criticism, is Harris's rejection of claims about a cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline as an attempt of spinning up some big conspiracy, with her writing, "Joe Biden was a smart guy with long experience and deep conviction, able to discharge the duties of president. On his worst day, he was more deeply knowledgeable, more capable of exercising judgment, and far more compassionate than Donald Trump on his best. But at 81, Joe got tired. That's when his age showed in physical and verbal stumbles." And Harris then also suggested that Biden's poor debate performance was linked to his schedule, writing, "I don't think it's any surprise that the debate debacle happened right after 2 back-to-back trips to Europe and a flight to the West Coast for a Hollywood fundraiser." And so with all that said, as we're seeing the opinions and reactions come in, I'll pass the question off to you. What's your opinion in reaction to this? What do you make of it? Why? Let me know in those comments. But then I'm going to give you a quick 1-minute break that helps keep the show free. And I'll say, why are you still sleeping on Wildgrain when your freezer, it could be stacked with bakery level bread, pastries, croissants, all the good things? Because our sponsor, Wildgrain, is the first bake from frozen subscription box delivering goodness to your door, into your freezer. And Wildgrain's fall lineup, apple cider donuts, pumpkin cinnamon biscuits, and sourdough so good, your relatives might actually stop fighting at dinner. And they keep it simple, just real food made by small bakeries and pasta makers across the US. And their slow fermented sourdough, it won't leave you bloated and questioning your life choices like that store-bought bread did. Plus, every box supports small bakeries across the US and donates meals to people in need, so you can brag about being generous while stuffing your face. And customize your own box, loaded up with sourdough, pastries, pastas, their new fall products, the edible flex your oven didn't know it needed. And here's the move, right? Scan the QR code or go to wildgrain.com/DeFranco for $30 off your first box and free croissants for life. Yes, croissants forever. But here's the catch. If you wait, you're not just missing out, you're literally robbing future you of unlimited buttery joy. Just remember, wildgrain.com/DeFranco, apple cider donuts, pumpkin cinnamon biscuits, people. But then next up in the news state, let's talk about this Texas A&M University hidden camera footage and firing scandal, right? Because there was a video that was taken from within a classroom there, and in it, a student is objecting to a part of the professor's instruction that includes discussion of gender and sexuality.
Kind of a recap of our remarks on gender and sexuality.
ready from last class. One thing we didn't get to in our last class.
I just have a question because I'm not entirely sure this is legal to be teaching. Because according to our president, there's only 2 genders. And so I am not going to participate in this because it's not legal, and I don't want to promote something that is against our president's laws as well as against my religious beliefs.
You certainly have the right to engage in things that you find religious. And you suggested anything else.
Yes.
You are under a misconception that what I'm saying is, if you are uncomfortable in this class, you do have the right to leave.
Yes.
What we are doing is not illegal, and if you would like to pretend that it is, you need to talk to the department head or the head of undergraduate. I'm not convinced that your proposal will be effective in stopping me from teaching things that are biologically true.
Okay.
And so that video is apparently filmed on a camera that was hidden. You have neither the student nor the professor ever appearing on screen. The school also hasn't identified them either. Right, but that video, it was initially posted by State Representative Brian Harrison, and it's gotten millions and millions of views, with the caption coming in hot saying that the student was booted from class after, quote, objecting to transgender indoctrination. And you then had Harrison going on to say that he plans on referring the university to the Trump administration for investigation and called for Texas Governor Greg Abbott to fire any A&M officials involved. But this video was really just the beginning, right? Because Harrison ended up sharing screenshots that appeared to show the department head threatening and punishing a student for, quote, disruptive behavior, as well as asking her not to return to class in exchange for maintaining her current grade. And as the situation got more and more attention, you had the school responding, with Texas A&M President Mark Welsh initially responding and saying that the English department head and the College of Arts and Sciences dean had been removed from their administrative positions, and saying that the school had previously had an issue with a course that, quote, contained content that did not align with any reasonable expectation of standard curriculum of the course. And Welsh writing, at that time, I made it clear to our academic leadership that course content must match catalog descriptions for each and every one of our course sections. He then said that the same issue persisted with the situation in the video, and it prompted him to take action in removing the dean and department head, writing, this isn't about academic freedom, it's about academic responsibility. Our degree programs and courses go through extensive approval processes, and we must ensure that what we ultimately deliver to students is consistent with what was approved. But then you had people quick to notice that Welsh's initial statement didn't say anything about the professor in question, and that included Governor Greg Abbott, who specifically called for her termination in response to the university's post. Which then brings us to yesterday, where you had Welsh posting another statement saying that the professor from that video was terminated effective immediately. But unfortunately for Welsh, that was not enough for Harrison, right? Because he appears to be out for Welsh's blood specifically, and he demanded that he be fired, right? And you then had Harrison going on to share several audio clips on X of what he says is Welsh defending and supporting LGBTQ plus courses, as well as one that Harrison says is Welsh responding to the student calling for the professor's termination.
Tell me what exactly you want changed. I mean, you're trying to pick a fight here. What do you want?
I'm not trying to pick a fight. No, sir, I'm not. I'm trying to.
Tell me what you're looking for. What do you expect us to do? Fire her?
Yes, absolutely, because it goes against.
Okay, well, that's not happening.
Though obviously Welsh didn't commit very hard to the not firing the professor thing. But the important part about these clips is that they are the basis for Harrison's push for Welsh's termination, right? And you had Harrison responding to an announcement about the professor's firing saying, why did I have to release hidden camera footage to make this happen? Why has the Texas A&M University president, who supports LGBTQ indoctrination and who berated this student in an attempt to cover it up, not been fired? Harrison then went on to tell the Washington Post, my ultimate goal is to prevent another penny of Texans' hard-earned tax money from ever being used to fund diversity, equity, inclusion, or LGBTQ indoctrination. The president of Texas A&M must be fired. He is a proud proponent of DEI and transgender indoctrination. With all that said, I think it should also be noted, this is not the first time that Welsh has been a target in the 2 years that he served as the university's president. I mean, just this last January, Abbott tried to fire Welsh over the university's decision to participate in a conference hosted by the PhD Project, which promotes classroom diversity. And what you saw there is at first Welsh defended himself, saying despite Texas's DEI ban, it wasn't illegal, but then he quickly backed down and the university didn't participate in the conference. But also, like, this isn't even the first time that Harrison specifically has taken issue with Welsh. I mean, just back in July, he recommended the Department of Health and Human Services investigate the school for engaging in targeted recruiting practices, which Harrison called discriminatory. But now, as far as this situation, we're gonna have to wait to see how things play out. Though I will say we've seen some pushback to the whole thing from organizations like ACLU and Equality Texas, which is an LGBTQ rights organization. Though this also is, we know that Trump's DOJ has opened an investigation into the incident and the handling by the university. So definitely a lot at play here and a lot more to come soon. But then next up in the news, we've got to talk about how NATO just opened fire against Russia for the very first time since the war in Ukraine started. Or because Poland and several other countries had to open fire against Russian drones that violated Polish airspace, which I will say it's a violation that many European leaders believe was intentional. Or you've got Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk addressing his country's parliament this morning, saying that there is no doubt that this provocation is incomparably more dangerous than any previous ones, and saying this situation brings us all closer to open conflict, closer than at any time since the Second World War. And as far as specifics, you had Tusk revealing that the country's military detected the first violation of Polish airspace at around 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday night, and the last at around 6:30 Wednesday morning, with Tusk saying, that gives you an idea of the scale. It lasted all night, and also saying that 19 violations were recorded overall, with at least 3 drones being confirmed to have been shot down. One, though, reportedly blew a hole through the roof of a house in a village. And then as far as NATO, they said that the drones were met with Polish and NATO air defenses, with Poland later clarifying that Dutch F-35 jets took part in the response, while Italian surveillance planes and mid-air refueling aircraft were also involved in the operation. And so with all that, one of the biggest things here is that Tusk has invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which, just to be very clear, I did not say Article 5. Right, Article 5 is the one that says an armed attack on one ally is considered an attack on all. Article 4 is just asking member states to consult on whether the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. So it could pave the way for joint NATO action, but unlike Article 5, it does not require it. And actually, the last time it was invoked was in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Poland also invoked it in 2014 after Russia illegally annexed Crimea. And also, I should say, regarding the intrusion into Polish airspace, it's not the first time something like this has happened, right? Because besides Poland, for example, Romania has reported multiple airspace violations and has even found drone wreckage in the country. In fact, these incidents have become so common in Romania that in May, it enacted a law allowing the army to shoot down unauthorized drones entering its airspace. So I will say, in any case, the key point here is that these accidents, they've long been seen by some as Russia testing NATO's reaction. Right? And with the scale of what happened this time, you have many saying that if it wasn't the case before, it is definitely the case now. Right? You've got the EU's foreign affairs chief calling this the most serious European airspace violation by Russia since the war began, and indications suggest it was intentional, not accidental. And as far as the indications she's talking about, I mean, you have Tusk noting, for example, that the drone seemed impossibly far off course from Ukraine, saying, for the first time in the history of this war, the drones did not come from over Ukraine, but a significant portion flew over Poland directly from Belarus. You also had the Polish foreign minister saying, given the number of drones, it simply defies imagination, that could be accidental. And you also had Ukrainian President Zelensky saying pretty much the same thing and adding, Moscow always pushes the boundaries of what is possible, and if it does not encounter a strong reaction, it remains at the new level of escalation. Or with Zelensky arguing that the violation of Polish airspace was an extremely dangerous precedent for Europe, and again, calling for Ukraine's allies to step up sanctions against Russia. Though of course then, as far as the United States goes, we've so far only seen Trump threatening sanctions and really not following through. And he's also reportedly been pressuring the EU to impose 100% tariffs on China and India as a way of pressuring Putin. But we'll have to see if the situation with Poland changes anything, right? As of recording, all Trump's done is post on Truth Social, what's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. And then he reportedly also spoke with the Polish president, who just said today's talks confirmed allied unity. But then as far as what Russia is saying, well, you had the top Russian diplomat in Poland denying any violations of Polish airspace, saying we consider the accusations groundless. No evidence that these drones are of Russian origin has been presented. But then also you ended up seeing a slightly different response from the Russian Defense Ministry when asked about this, because you had a spokesperson just simply saying no targets of Polish territory were planned. Right? And then of course all of this, it's playing out as Russia's really just been ramping up its aerial assault on Ukraine. I mean, just earlier this week, we talked about the record-breaking attack that hit the main government building in Kyiv and killed 5. And then actually yesterday, Russian forces bombed a village in eastern Ukraine as retirees were collecting their pensions. They killed at least 24 people there. And then those drones that crossed into Poland last night, they were just a few of the 415 drones, along with 42 cruise missiles and 1 ballistic missile that were launched by Russia. And so there's a lot developing, and we're gonna have to keep our eyes on this because this thing could escalate even more just at the drop of a hat. But then quickly, a 1-minute break that helps keep the show free. Let me say, what's more painful than stepping on a Lego barefoot? Well, I think trying to hire someone the old-fashioned way. Right? At least the Lego pain eventually goes away, but hiring, that stress lingers for weeks, which is why today's sponsor, ZipRecruiter, exists, and you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/DeFranco. Because hiring should feel futuristic, not like waiting on Windows 95 with dial-up. I mean, it's like, here's 400 resumes from people who definitely didn't read the job description. No one's got time for that. And half the resumes, they read like someone hit copy-paste from buzzwords weekly, like passionate self-starter, okay, but can you actually do the work? And ZipRecruiter's new advances connect you with qualified candidates in minutes, like no waiting, no endless inbox chaos. Find someone promising who fits what you need. You can unlock their contact information instantly, like, hello, actual human I need. And since ZipRecruiter adds over 320,000 new resumes every month, your odds of finding the right fit go way up. I mean, that's why they're the #1 rated hiring site on G2. They're basically speed running the whole process. Also, bonus stat, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So hey, stop letting resumes waste your life. And if you go to ZipRecruiter.com/DeFranco right now, you can try it for free. And again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/DeFranco. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. But then next up in the news, let's talk about how when Donald Trump sat down for dinner at a seafood restaurant last night, he was served much more than shrimp. So those are protesters from Code Pink. They're a feminist activist group, and they took credit for what happened. And they said on X, Trump looked us in the eyes. We made sure he will never dine in peace while communities are under siege.
He is terrorizing communities. He is not welcome to D.C. He's not welcome to Palestine. Palestine is not for sale.
Right, this kind of confrontation, it's actually a little unusual for the president because he often doesn't put himself in public spaces where he might get exposed to it. But he's often just eating at the White House, Mar-a-Lago, and his exclusive golf clubs. But yesterday, he had an outing with several members of his cabinet that appeared to be meant as kind of a demonstration of just how safe D.C. is thanks to him. Right, I mean, the day before, he declared just 1 month after his federal agents and National Guard started roaming the city, D.C. has made a full 180 turnaround.
We went from one of the most, and some people say the worst, the most violent city. Can you imagine our capital being the most violent city? But it was really bad, into a totally safe zone. It's called a safe zone city. There's no crime. They said crime's down 87%. They said, no, it's more than 87%. Virtually nothing. Friends of mine called, one in particular, who's been in D.C. for a long time. And he said, I haven't gone out in 4 years for dinner with my wife. The restaurants were all closing because people were afraid, even if they were in the restaurant, it didn't matter. They were held up. You know, guys would walk in with guns into a restaurant. And that's over. It's not happening. It's now safe.
But that particular comment about restaurants, it's interesting because in reality, the industry's been struggling since he began his crackdown, right? Tourism, reservations, and general foot traffic all decreasing, leading some restaurants to fire staff, cut hours, shrink menus. And I mean, you're seeing things like last month, the city's restaurant association extended its restaurant week, which is something it really only ever does during emergencies like severe weather to boost business, with the group's president telling Axios, this is our pandemic 2.0. Between the federal escalation and tipped minimum wage hike, we could be heading for a potential panic. I've heard from folks that won't renew leases or even consider DC. I mean, even the Museum of the Bible where Trump spoke in that clip I just showed you, they told CNN, we have seen our visitor intake impacted recently and the summer months have been underperforming. Right? You know, while they said the decline in business, it can't be pinned on any single factor, there are a lot of people pointing to the federal takeover as the most immediate cause. You've got people like the CEO of Destination DC, which is a nonprofit that promotes tourism, saying, the visuals are checkpoints, police everywhere, and tanks rolling down the street, which is not our reality. We had 9/11, the anthrax attacks, the DC sniper, government shutdowns, January 6th, and now this. But still, at least according to Trump, DC's restaurants are busier than they've been in a long time, and that's because they've cleared up the streets both literally and figuratively by repairing things, pushing out the homeless, and arresting criminals. And actually with that, you had the White House announcing yesterday that some 2,200 arrests have been made since August 7th. But despite the administration's narrative that it's bagging gangbangers, child predators, murderers, and the like, preliminary data appears to suggest otherwise, with the Reuters analysis, for example, of more than 500 criminal cases last month, finding none were for a violent offense. And then you pair that to a New York Times review of over 1,000 cases coming to a similar conclusion that many, if not most of the offenses appear to be relatively minor. You're looking at things like traffic infractions, drug possession, or carrying an open container of alcohol. Or with one guy who was arrested for smoking pot telling them, I've never seen this much police presence in my whole life. You guys are worried about some guy smoking a joint on the corner on a Friday night? Now that said, the authorities have confiscated some 200 or 300 guns, but many of those apparently belong to people who were licensed to carry in other states, but they just lacked a DC permit. So what you saw is that in the Times review, just 9% of cases in which federal agents were mentioned involved responding to a violent or property crime. But also, to give credit where credit's due, reported violent crime incidents in the first 3 weeks of the takeover dropped by 10% from the previous 3-week period. And you had the number of recorded homicides falling from 8 to 3, and burglaries, robberies, and carjackings also down. So with that, you have experts warning of the short-term fluctuations like that. They may just be a symptom of people staying off the streets immediately after the crackdown. And I should also note that Trump seems to be more concerned with certain crimes more than others.
And much lesser things that take place in the home, they call crime. You know, they'll do anything they can to find something. If a man has a little fight with the wife, they say this was a crime, see? So now I can't claim 100%.
Right, and so then with that, you had a number of people reading that comment as the president downplaying the severity of domestic violence and even suggesting that it shouldn't be a crime. And then actually, yesterday, a reporter asked Caroline Levitt about it as well.
Exactly what crimes was the president referring to?
He wasn't referring to crimes. That's exactly the point he was making, Ouija. What the president is saying is that these crimes will be made up and reported as a crime to undermine the great work that the federal task force is doing to reduce crime in Washington, D.C.
But ultimately, what I'll say is the latest update is that today, the federal takeover of D.C. is officially supposed to end, though Trump's federal agents don't appear to be leaving. In fact, Trump has suggested that he'll repeat the same process in other cities, possibly Chicago or New Orleans in the coming days. So with the experiment in D.C. as the model, people there probably won't like being occupied by federal troops much more than the Capitol's residents did. Right? I mean, you had people hanging D.C. flags from their porches, making street art of Pete Hegseth getting hit by a sandwich, warning each other about ICE checkpoints, and then last week you had thousands marching in the streets to protest.
See, this is our home. We need to fight, and we need to resist. This is not godlike. This is evil, the corruption. You need to get on your knees and pray for forgiveness.
We don't have a home rule. We don't have our own senators or members of the House of Representatives. So we're at the mercy of a dictator like this, a wannabe dictator.
But then next up in the news, we need to talk about how nearly 1 million jobs just vanished, according to the revised numbers by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Right? And to say this drop of 911,000 jobs between April of 2024 and March of 2025 is substantial would be a massive understatement, as, I mean, we're talking about over a 50% reduction. Essentially, every job type across the economy was affected, but the worst were hospitality, wholesale, retail, and manufacturing. And for some groups, those numbers indicate that they are facing an economic crisis. Right? Because the general unemployment rate for people 16 and up, it's just 4.3%. And on the surface, that seems pretty good, but the devil is in the details. And when you look at individual groups, it tells a much different story. Right? So take people between the ages of 16 to 24. They have an unemployment rate of 10.5%. Now, I will say, it's common for that group to have relatively high unemployment compared to everyone else, but 10.5% is high, and really was only higher during the peak of the pandemic. And while there could definitely be a number of reasons for this, one notable one might be AI slowly starting to take over entry-level jobs. You know, in addition to the short-term pain and struggle that someone might have, it could have a massive cascading effect as it can slow down someone's career entirely. And what's also interesting is that this increased unemployment, it's affecting both educated and non-educated young people. I mean, normally that's not the case. Right? Often fields where a degree isn't required, they have much lower unemployment. So with all this, I'll say for the experts in the field, this revision, it wasn't a massive surprise, right? Because the quarterly reports, they indicated that just something wasn't adding up both under the end of Biden's term and the start of Trump's. And so because of that, you have supporters of President Trump saying that the BLS needs to be overhauled since their initial reports seem to be off so often, with, for example, Vice President J.D. Vance saying, "It's difficult to overstate how useless BLS data had become. A change was necessary to restore confidence." And that is, you had White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt adding, "This is exactly why we need new leadership to restore trust and confidence in the BLS's data on behalf of the financial markets, businesses, policymakers, and families that rely on this data to make major decisions." Right? And others claiming that this was proof that any struggling economy the US might have is because of the Biden administration and not any actions done by Trump. But then also, on the flip side of this report has led to people who used to trust the BLS results now doubting them, with takes like Donald Trump's appointee E.J. Antony, formerly chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, is at BLS now. Should we trust any numbers from BLS, including downward revisions of Biden-era numbers? Although I will say, those specific doubts might be misplaced, as Antony is yet to actually be confirmed and isn't in charge yet. And he may not be after a Twitter account with his name was discovered to be posting some wild shit. And then, of course, in addition to that, you have many who are blaming the poor outlook on Trump's economic policies, such as tariffs and gutting the federal government. I mean, you've got representatives like Ted Lieu saying,
"Last month, the jobs report was so bad that Donald Trump felt compelled to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics to distract from how bad the report was. This month, the report was equally horrible because it turns out when you fire the head of BLS, that doesn't actually change the rules of math."
Then also, in addition to all of that, just, you know, the fact that there was such a massive revision at all, it's led to many doubting more recent estimates. Though on that note, I think it is important to remember that the quarterly reports are exactly that. Estimates. Revisions are actually extremely common, and it's only been recently that they become so politicized. The difference this time is the scale, and now it's believed that the next annual report in March of 2026, it might also show a massive decrease in jobs. Right? And also, I'll say there's, other evidence that the economy is just not doing too hot right now, such as a federal report that shows Americans have an all-time low confidence in their ability to actually get a job. And that, it's on top of worries by Americans 40 and under and those 59 and over that they don't think they'll have a job in the next year. And so then, all of this taken together, it's renewed calls by some for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates in the hopes that it'll speed up the economy and job growth. And regarding if that's going to happen, we'll see on the 17th, right? So it's just around the corner. But that, my friend, is the end of at least today's show. Because remember, you can check out the latest episode of my new podcast right here. You can click or tap that, or right here, you got the newest Philip DeFranco show. I've even got links to both in the description down below, so you can get filled in on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it feels best. That came out weird. Whatever, we're rolling with it. Thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.